Good evening. Welcome to the Elyria City Council for Monday, May 15th, 2023. At this time, I take a moment of reflective silence. Please keep in the prayers of Landry Simmons, who is the husband of Diane Simmons, and Josh Locko, who is the son of our clerk, Michael Locko, and his mother, Sherry Grove. Both of these individuals most recently have come about some emergency health issues, and we pray for them. And at that time, we'll take a moment of reflective silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Callahan, would you please lead us in the pledge? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome. Mr. Clerk, can I have a roll call, please?
Yes, sir. Mr. Callahan.
Here.
Mr. Sira.
Here.
Mr. Oswald.
Here.
Mr. Corbin.
Here.
Mrs. Mitchell.
Here.
Mr. Tollett.
Here.
Mr. Lippian.
Here.
Mrs. Davis. Mrs. Simmons. Mr. Schneider.
Here.
Mr. Stewart.
Here.
We have two excuses for Mrs. Davis and Mrs. Simmons.
Can I get a motion for their excuse?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Mitchell, second by Mr. Sira. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Public hearings.
There are none.
Can I get approval of the minutes?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Sira.
Second.
Second by Mr. Schneider. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Remarks and reports from the city officials. Mayor Wellford is not here. Safety Service Director Lundy.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. First off, I think we can all celebrate with Issue 8 being passed. I'd like the administration to thank the voters of Elyria for their support of Issue 8. These are challenging economic times, but the vote of support affirms that residents do believe in supporting our safety forces and want to see our city continue to make progress. Thank you to everyone who worked or helped out or supported the Issue 8 initiative. I think the mayor can finally sleep well at night. Even on Election Day, he was working the polls, informing voters about the importance of Issue 8 to our city's future. I think we all know we were staring down a potential $8 million hole there, and that would have been a real setback for the progress our city's been making. Just so you're aware, obviously, it's grass around the city, and we've sent out close to 80 tall grass notices now. Homeowners have their 8 days to address the issue, or we will cut it. The biggest challenge has been we've received a lot of rain. Obviously, that makes it difficult for us to cut. When you receive those high grass complaints, please send them to the Safety Service Office, and we will get on it. And that completes my report.
Any questions for Mr. Lundy? Mr. Sira.
Mr. President, did you say they have 8 days notice, or is it only 5?
8 days.
Okay, I thought it was 8 inches in 5 days. We've been telling people wrong then.
Well, I will double check, but I thought the notice said 8 days instead of 5 days.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Lundy? Finance Director Plesky.
No report this time, Mr. President.
Law Director Deary.
Good evening. Through you, Mr. President. No report this evening.
Elyria Police Department, Chief Pelko.
Good evening, Council, Mr. President. I'd just like to report on our traffic unit. We issued 265 citations in the first 2 weeks of having that unit started up. So we're off to a good start. Just want to remind everybody we're out there for your safety. That's why the reason we're doing this with the complaints. We'd be happy to address any traffic issues anywhere in the city. You can just email me or Lieutenant Welsh, and we'll address that. So, with that said, I just wanted to inform you and let you know, with council's permission, I have 3 officers going to schools out of town. I have a captain and a lieutenant that will be going to an FBI leadership school for a week in Colorado in July, and then I also have a sergeant who will be going to an FBI homicide school in August.
You're looking for permission for that?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Mr. President, I'll make the motion to approve.
Second.
Second by Mr. Sarah. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Okay, Chief, anything else?
I have nothing else. I'll entertain any questions at this time.
Any questions for the chief? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Larry Fire Department, Assistant Chief Gall. Thank you, Assistant Chief. Assistant Safety Service Director, Ms. Calvert. Assistant Safety Service Director, Mr. Williams. Mr. Williams, before you speak, can I ask everybody in the audience to please put your phones to either silent or off? Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and to Council. I don't have a formal report. However, I know during the referral section, based on some previous conversations, there will be the item referred on discussion of Oakwood School. And I know presently there are some members from Save Our Children, and they will have probably public comment during that section. Just wanted you to be aware of that, and we can hear from them during that section for public comments. Thank you. I'm sorry, if it's okay, for individuals who would like to speak, you do need to sign in. Is it too late at this time for that?
Yes, Mr. Wilson, if that would have been arranged before, you would have, notified the clerk's office
Yes.
well in advance instead of the meeting, minute before the meeting. That could have been arranged over and through there. So I would have a few of those individuals to speak on whatever you're bringing forward to this council. I mean, this is the first I'm hearing about it.
Yes, so they just, I thought they would be here early enough to sign in to speak, and that didn't occur.
You can have a few representatives to speak.
Okay, great. Should we do that now or should we wait?
But we'll just do it in the public, petitions from the lobby.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Tolet.
I have a question not concerning this for Mr. Williams.
Yes, sir.
You approved a purchase order for $25,150 for traffic signs, for illuminated traffic signs, all specifically for Ward 1.
Okay.
This did not come through council committee, and speaking to the engineer's office today, it didn't go through the engineer's office, and it was all dedicated to one ward. Wards 2 through 7 were excluded from these traffic signs. Can you help give council guidance on this question, why the other wards were excluded from this?
At this moment, I cannot. I will look that up. I couldn't speak to that right now because I'm not aware specifically, so please allow for me to look at the record, and I'll be able to share with you at the next meeting exactly what that detail is.
You approved the purchase order on it?
Yes, and there are literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of purchase orders that come through. So again, if it would be okay with council, I will do some due diligence, and then I'll be able to report back to you on that specific purchase order.
Okay.
Any more
Do you
questions?
have anything else, Mr. Williams?
No, sir. Thank you.
Mr. Corzine, Superintendent of Wastewater. Ms. Scott, Community Development? Very good, thank you. All right, I think we got everybody. President's referrals and remonstrances. Item number 1, Community Development. Item number 2, Finance. Item number 3, Finance. Item number 4, Finance. Item number 5, Finance. Item number 6, Finance. Item number 7, Finance. Item number 8, Finance. Item number 9, Finance. Item number 10, Finance and Community Development. Item number 11, Finance and Community Development. Item number 12, Finance and Community Development. Item number 13, Finance and Community Development. Item number 14, Finance and Community Development. Item number 15, Finance and Community Development. Item number 16, Finance and Community Development. Item number 17, Finance and Utilities. Item number 18, Utilities. Item 19, Utilities. Items 20 through 22, received and placed on file in the clerk's office.
Through you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Law Director Derry.
Thank you. Number 2 also needs to be referred to Utilities, Safety, and Environment.
As well?
Yes. Number 18 also needs to be referred to Finance if monies have not been appropriated.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Petitions and remonstrances from the lobby.
We have several. Robert Abbott, 618 North Abbey Road. He's got an array of problems here that he's listed, so I'll let him go through them. Mr. Abbott?
Welcome, Mr. Abbott. Please state your name and address for the record. We do have a 3-minute time limit, so do the best you can.
Well, I'll try to go as fast as I can.
Before you start, someone's phone is going off. Could you please turn your phones off? Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Abbott.
Okay. I complained to the council person over by the Midway Mall area about a recycle container. The company's called Paper Retriever Com, and it's had a broken flap on it for 2 years now. And that outfit is basically, the phone number's on the side, you have to call them. They don't have a regular pickup like a weekly or every other week. You just call them when it's full, I guess. Well, that thing's still broke and papers fly out of it all the time. And I let the council person in that area know about it. I was just there today before I came here. It's still broke. The Midway Diner has had illegal dumping going on for well over a year now. I reported that over a year ago. Hasn't been cleaned up. And the last time I was in the area a couple of weeks ago, out of curiosity, there was a homeless person staying in the back in a shed. I'd like to talk about Cascade Park. I work there part-time. Last summer, I had 2 people come up to me that had never been there before. Oh, this is a beautiful place, la, la, la. But when they got there, they said, we were kind of concerned when we first got here. They weren't from the area. When they saw the houses up by the entrance of Cascade Park and the horrible condition they're in, wanted to address that and see what's being done about it. Okay, because that Cascade Park's basically a diamond in the rough, and you got houses that looks like they need to be demolished right by the entrance. It's horrible. Abbey Road manhole covers. I live right in the area. Ever since that project happened, it looks like the pavement has sunk down a little bit. I'm not saying the manhole covers are bad, but every time a semi-truck goes over them, they bounce down the road and make a heck of a racket. A lot of times it's 4:35 in the morning because a lot of truck drivers want to get a good start on the day to get out of rush hour traffic, and they're bouncing down the road, and I can't sleep. And I called the engineer department last year. All I got was a receptionist. Said, I'll tell them. I called ODOT. They said, well, that's a city project. The city has to handle it. It needs to be corrected because it's awful, okay? And then one other thing was Ford Road. I drive on Ford Road all the time, go to the Metro Parks, and they let the weeds get 3 to 4 feet high. And I called the street department about that, and they said, well, they don't cut that on a regular basis. Somebody has to, like me, has to call to complain. And I thought, well, who do I call to get them to do that on a routine basis, is basically. And I think I covered it all, so.
Well, very good. I don't know if we had your name and address for the record, but what we'll have you do is the Safety Service Director's office will contact you here, I would hopefully this week, and coordinate with you as far as some of the concerns that you have, and then we'll see if we can't get them addressed or get you the answers that you're looking for where things stand.
Okay. As far as those houses by Cascade Park, does the council person in that area know how bad a shape they're in? Is it one of those deals where it takes a long time to get problems like that solved? I mean, the houses, they're horrible. The city ought to buy them, make them an offer they can't refuse, buy them out, knock them down, and just leave that area vacant.
Sure, there's a process that it has to go through as far as demolition goes, and that's just kind of the steps that has to happen.
All right.
Mr. Toolette, did you want to weigh in on something?
Yes, two things. We finally have an ally on the housing issue with the county health department. They came last week and spoke, who is able to assist us now with some of these housing condition issues. So we have a real ally that has teeth for enforcement on some of those things. And on the dumpsters, those containers, the city passed an ordinance about 4 years ago. We passed an ordinance because we had places where clothes were coming out or papers. They are not permitted in the city. So again, if you can follow up with the addresses with the Safety Service Director, and I will follow up with the Safety Service Director for enforcement on that, but it is against the city ordinance for those.
Yeah, I don't know the address numbers in that area. It's just
Or
that
the area.
But, I mean, they stick out like a sore thumb. You can't miss them. So, right by the entrance. Okay.
Again, someone will be in touch with you in regards to it. Thank you for coming up.
Sherry Crawford, 9033 South Murray Ridge Road. Topic is first responder joint facility or training facility.
Welcome. Please state your name and address for the record.
Sherry Crawford, 9033 South Murray Ridge Road, Elyria.
Okay, go ahead.
I am here because of my property borders the facility that I'm finding out that they're trying to go through. I'm very concerned with the noise. The noise is going to affect my life. I have a small son. I have horses. It's very loud. Someone's already using the property to shoot. I can tell it's an organized shooting. I fear someone's going to get hurt with horses and that loud noise. I fear it's going to destroy my quiet enjoyment of my property. I live in the township and I have a small farm that I enjoy. And this shooting, I fear, is going to ruin that for me. So that's why I'm here. I'm very concerned about the noise of the shooting.
Right. I know tonight is the first reading for that on the agenda here, but I believe there's a public hearing scheduled for June the 5th.
Okay.
So we would welcome you to come there and state your concerns at that particular time.
I received a letter, but I did not have, it was not in time to actually show up for the May 8th meeting. So that's why I found out. Yes.
Yeah. So, well, I would suggest, again, June 5th was the next meeting that will have the public hearing, and at that point you could have concerns. And then please talk to the Chief Pelko in regards, he can share you with that. And, you know, this should give you the information, but still, please come up.
Okay.
Yep. Mr. Oswald, did you have a question for her, or?
Well, a comment through you, Mr. President. So I've seen the presentation that they give a couple times, and what they are planning is doing some really tall mounds kind of all around. They know that the issue is going to be with sound, so they hear you.
Because they're already shooting and it's extremely loud.
They don't have any mounds built, but as soon as they start getting funding, I'm assuming from the FBI and stuff like that, they're going to be doing that. Like I said, they know that the sound is going to be bad.
Okay.
They're going to work on that issue for you.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for coming up.
Neil Malbrook, 9645 Murray Ridge Road, First Responder Joint Training Facility.
Hello, my name is Neil Mabrouk, 9645 Murray Ridge Road. I'm also here for the First Responders Training Facility. I live not too far. There's only one property between mine and the facility that's being talked about. Same reasons like Sherry. I'm out in the country, to enjoy my peace and quiet. There has been some shooting going on. I think we've even called the Elyria Police Department, and they knew nothing about it. So I don't know if the FBI is going out there and, testing things out. But I'm right across the street from Murray Ridge School, and I'm hearing that shooting going on right now. And has anybody checked with, the health department or Murray Ridge School with the children with developmental disabilities that, some of them are auditory issues? When they're going to be out at recess, they're going to hear it. I'm going to hear it. And yes, they may be putting mounds to negate the sound, but obviously they know it's an issue. So if you're going to be, it's less than half a mile of open field to Murray Ridge School, that noise is going to carry. It's going to carry to my house. I'm, like I said, one property over. I think from my house to the middle of that property is less than 1,200 feet. So it's pretty close. And then for future development plans, they're talking about a skid pad with, car tires screeching and, learning the driving exercises and, whatnot. That's going to impact my quality of life, one of the reasons why I bought the property. And I'm sure the sound is also going to bring my property value down. Am I going to be compensated for that? So it's a lose-lose situation, for anybody that's in that neighborhood.
Okay. So what I would suggest, I don't know if there's anybody else who's going to speak to this in regards to this, but Chief Pelko will have, if he gets the names and addresses from the clerk's office, he can contact you and Lieutenant Frank on top of coming in on the June the 5th meeting to have, voice your concerns again and kind of give you the overall plan of what's being presented from this council.
Okay. From the sounds of it, there's no stopping this from happening. But we just want to make sure that we can either make it known that this is going to be a real issue for us.
Yep. I assure you that they will try to inform you as much as they have right now and what the plan is moving forward for this, if in fact the zoning does move forward. But I would encourage you to be here on June the 5th.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Carla Velez, 155 Brook Valley Drive, Oakwood School for SOC.
Welcome. Please state your name and address for the record.
Does a 3-minute start after I say my name, right? I'm just asking, just to be sure. Okay, my name is Carla Valles. I live at 155 Brook Valley Drive, Elyria, Ohio. I'm in a very unique position. I work for Elyria City Schools and I work for Save Our Children, which means I clock in at 8:15 every day and clock out at 8:30 p.m. working for the children in this community. I need these children to have a face and not be a number. It makes sense to me that we would use a facility that was built to educate children to continue in their growth. Due to COVID and many other things, we have a group of children from kindergarten to 12th grade that are struggling. Save Our Children is all about helping them with that struggle. And we serve over 100 children as it is. In the facility that we're in right now, we don't have the room to expand. There are way more than 100 children needing our help. Not only would Oakwood give us the opportunity to educate more children, to reach more children and families, because we do work with the families as well and work with their needs. Not only would it allow us to do that, but it will give us a facility where we can enter and do more programming. We are teaching our children everything we possibly can about being positive leaders, about the importance of education, about the fact that there is no place on this earth that they don't belong. We have made a point of centering our field trips and our plans around them being able to expand their minds and to see what they can do. I understand that there are some issues with Oakwood School, but My issue is there is no bigger investment that this community can make than in your children. If you do not invest in your children, the community will die. We cannot survive without our children. The children that we work with at SOC are wonderful. Their families are wonderful, but they are struggling. We are trying to do the best we can to help them become successful, to help them become leaders, to help them to possibly sit where you all are one day. But the facility we are in right now is like somebody putting chains on these children's feet and arms and telling them, you can only go this far. You're not worth the time, you're not worth the money right now because there are other things more important. There is nothing more important than the children. Understand that I do this because this is my why. This should be every community's why. If you can't say you're honestly doing what you can to invest in your children, then you should be ashamed of yourself, and there's no purpose of us being here. We need to make our investment, stop talking the talk, walk the walk, put the money where it has to be, figure out what we need to do so that we're showing our children that we believe in you, because it's time for the lip service to stop. Oakwood is where we need to be because that's where we and the children can be most successful, and my time is up.
Mary Sawerka, 119 Fresno Court, utility bill write-offs and Chestnut Commons traffic.
Good evening. Mary Sawerka, 119 Fresno Court. Mr. Lundy, the grass is 8 inches high and the days to cut it is 5.
That is not correct.
I just looked it up in the ordinance.
The notices that go out from 8 days of the postmark.
The ordinances state 8 inches in 5 days. I'm here to just remind council and administration, although Mayor Whitfield isn't here, that I hope that you're still continuing your discussions about the traffic situation over at Chestnut Commons. Sheets is underway, and the traffic is going to start over there, so I'm here as just reminding. ARPA money. I'm reminding you about the ARPA money. Last meeting I saw there was a proposal by the mayor about how much more you could borrow. I didn't see any plan for the ARPA money or what was going to happen with it, so I'm going to be here to remind you again to try to save a sliver of that money for the railroad bridges in the downtown. They are still falling apart. They look horrible, and it's the gateway to our community. My final thing is I have a lot of questions about the utility bill write-offs that you do on a regular basis. I think that it would be time for the community to get a little bit more of the percentage of write-offs that you are writing off. Each week, just about, or every meeting, you're writing off more and more utility bills. They're getting transferred over to the real estate taxes. I mean, the mayor has pontificated about lowering water rates and water bills, but I'm still paying mine. And all these write-offs are going to cost each and every one of us that still pay ours more money because they are not getting paid. They're just getting to bad debt. So I would like council to have a report, maybe within the next meeting or two, on just how much the delinquency factor is in the water and sewers funds and how much you're writing off as a percentage of income. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sawerka.
Through you, Mr. Chair, if I may. When these matters come before committee or council, for instance, we have a resolution on the agenda tonight for collection of delinquent or inactive utility accounts to certify accounts to Lorraine County Auditor. Those amounts are not being written off. They're being certified to the tax duplicate so that they may be collected. They actually have priority right behind property taxes. They do not prevent the city from collecting them in other matters, but quite honestly, they are our best shot at collecting, and we do frequently collect those. So to term those as a write-off, in my opinion, I think is inaccurate from a legal and actually a financial standpoint, and I just wanted to set the record straight on that. If there's other write-offs that are happening, then that's not what's going before the council this evening or on other evenings. On a regular basis, we do turn those over to the tax duplicate so that we may collect them. And absolutely, if council wants to know what kind of collections we're getting, I believe that utilities would certainly be able to get you that information.
All right. Thank you, Law Director Deary.
Chase Ferris, 4229 Ivanhoe Drive, Save Our Children.
Welcome. Please state your name and address for the record.
Chase Ferris, 4229 Ivanhoe Drive, Lorraine, Ohio. As the Executive Director of Save Our Children, I just want to say I appreciate the support from all of our parents, our students, and staff members showing up today. All I ask is that the Oakwood proposal that we have be added to the agenda the next meeting. Other than that, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Ferris.
That's all the petitions and responses from the lobby.
Petitions and remonstrances from council members.
But there are none.
Reports of standing and special committees.
We have one. We have considered the matter of a liquor license transfer from Ayala Gutierrez LLC to 628 Midville LLC DBA La China, 629 Chestnut Commons Drive, Elyria, and the city of Elyria does not request a hearing.
Mr. Callahan.
Mr. President, I move this committee report be passed on its first reading.
Second.
Second by Ms. Mitchell. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Committee Report 2023-4. That's all the committee reports?
Resolutions first reading.
Sponsored by Finance. A resolution approving a list submitted by the Safety Service Director for the collection of delinquent inactive utility accounts and directing the Clerk of Council to certify said accounts to Lorraine County Auditor.
Mr. Tolet.
Mr. President, I ask that this resolution be passed in its first reading under suspension of rules.
Second.
Second by Mr. Schneider. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Resolution 2023-13. Sponsored by Finance. A resolution finding that city has unfit for municipal use certain city property.
Mr. Tolet.
Mr. President, excuse me, I ask that this resolution be passed in its first reading under suspension of rules and under suspension of rules.
Second.
Second by Mr. Snyder. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Resolution 2023-14. That's all resolutions first reading.
Resolutions second reading.
There are none.
Resolutions third reading.
There are none.
Ordinances first reading.
Sponsored by Finance. An ordinance authorizing the Director of Safety Service to dispose of by the best means possible city property that is unfit for municipal use.
Mr. Tolet.
Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed in its first reading under suspension of rules.
Second.
Second by Mr. Schneider. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2023-69. Sponsored by Finance. An ordinance authorizing the waiver of the fire suspension-related fees and plan review fees for expenses for Espresso Bakery LLC located at 104th Street, Elyria, Ohio, and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Tolet.
Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed in its first reading under suspension of rules and declared an emergency.
Second.
Second by Mr. Schneider. Is there any further discussion? Questions?
Through you, Mr. President, Mr. Lippian has his hand raised.
Mr. Lippian?
Through you, Mr. President, thank you. Just note that I will be abstaining from this vote.
Hey, what's that?
I will be abstaining from this vote.
Okay.
Call for the question.
Question's been called. On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the emergency, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Do we have a suspension because we have two vacant and Mr. Lippian abstained? Is that enough for the suspension?
We needed 8. We have 9.
8.
Oh, we have,
Eight,
I'm sorry.
2 absences.
Thank
and-
you. Yes, thank you for checking my math. Yes, we're okay. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Ordinance 2023-70. Sponsored by Finance. An ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement to purchase 3 new Ford F-350 trucks for Parks and Recreation, Central Maintenance, and Street Department pursuant to ORC 125.04 and declare an emergency.
Mr. Tolet.
Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed in its first reading under suspension of rules and declared an emergency.
Second.
Second by Mr. Center. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the emergency, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2023-71. Sponsored by Finance. An ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a 1-year agreement with Verizon Wireless for wireless service data access for computers and modems in certain department vehicles of the city of Elyria through the State of Ohio Purchasing Program or equivalent program.
Mr. Tolet.
Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed in its first reading under suspension of rules.
Second.
Second by Mr. Scenario. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2023-72. Sponsored by Finance. An ordinance authorizing the Finance Director to pay the 2023 membership dues to Lorraine County Community Development Corporation and declare an emergency.
Mr. Tolet.
Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed in its first reading under suspension of rules and declared an emergency.
Second.
Second by Mr. Schneider. Is there any further discussion? Mr. Lippian?
Through you, Mr. President, I'll be abstaining from this vote.
Call for the question.
Questions have been called. On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the emergency, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2023-73. Sponsored by Finance. An ordinance amending ordinance number 2023-34, known as the 2023 Permanent Appropriations Ordinance, to change funds in various accounts.
Mr. Tolet.
Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed in its first reading under suspension of rules.
Second by Mr. Snyder. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Through you, Mr. President, I'm just letting the clerk's office know on number 72, or sorry, for 73, we have a suspension and passage, but we don't have the 9 for the emergency.
Okay, so let's just have its first reading.
Well, I mean, it's passed, it's just, it's just, the 30 days will need to be waited out since we don't have enough for the emergency. Okay.
Thank you.
Ordinance 2023-74. Sponsored by Community Development. An ordinance amending section 1131.02 codified ordinances of the city of Elyria, Ohio, known as the zoning ordinance, to rezone certain real property located in the vicinity of Murray Ridge Road, Infirmary Road, and Garden Street, Elyria, Ohio, from R-MD Residential Medium District to density to S1 Special Industrial District.
I declare this public hearing has, ordinance has had its first reading. Public hearing is scheduled for June the 5th, 2023.
Sponsored by Community Development. An ordinance granting a conditional use permit pursuant to Chapter 1135 of the Codified Ordinances of the City of Elyria, Ohio, to the City of Elyria for the First Responder Joint Training Facility at real property in the vicinity of Murray Ridge Road, Infirmary Road, and Garden Street, Elyria, Ohio.
I declare this ordinance has had its first reading. Public hearing is scheduled for June the 5th, 2023 at 7 p.m.
That's correct, Mr. President.
Those residents for who is here speaking in regards to the zoning, it's at 7 p.m. on June the 5th.
Sponsored by Finance and Utilities. An ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into an amendment, number 10, to the agreement with AECom Technical Services, Inc. for management services for the City of Elyria wastewater pollution plant consolidation, SSO, CSO, WWPCP wet weather plan.
Mr. Tolet.
Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed in its first reading under suspension of rules.
Second.
Second by Ms. Mitchell. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2023-75. Sponsored by Utilities. An ordinance authorizing the mayor to advertise for bids and enter into a contract for the 2023 street sweeping program for the city of Elyria and declare an emergency.
Ms. Mitchell.
Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed on its first reading under suspension of rules and declared an emergency.
Second.
Second by Mr. Snyder. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the emergency, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2023-76. Sponsored by Utilities. An ordinance authorized the mayor to enter into a contract to purchase 3 new 2024 side-loading sanitation trucks for the sanitation department through the Ohio State Purchasing Program or equivalent program and declare an emergency.
Ms. Mitchell.
Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed on its first reading under suspension of rules and declared an emergency.
Second.
Second by Mr. Tolet. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the emergency, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2023-77. Sponsored by Utilities. An ordinance authorizing the mayor to advertise for bids and enter into a contract for the 2023 Wesley Water Main Replacement Project.
Ms. Mitchell.
Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed on its first reading under suspension of rules.
Second.
Second by Mr. Snyder. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2023-78. Sponsored by Utilities. An ordinance amending Elyria Codified Ordinances Section 932.01, definitions and declaring an emergency.
Ms. Mitchell.
Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed on its first reading under suspension of rules and declared an emergency.
Second.
Second by Mr. Snyder. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the emergency, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2023-79. Sponsored by Utilities. An ordinance amending Elyria Codified Ordinances, Section 932.03, General Discharge Prohibitions, and declaring an emergency.
Ms. Mitchell?
Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed on its first reading under suspension of rules and declared an emergency.
Second.
Second by Mr. Snyder. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the emergency, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2023-80. Sponsored by Utilities. An ordinance amending Elyria Codified Ordinances, Section 932.04, specific pollutant limitations, grease, oil, and sand traps, and declare an emergency.
Ms. Mitchell?
Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed on its first reading under suspensions of rules and declared an emergency.
Second.
Second by Mr. Snyder. Is there any further discussion? On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the emergency, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2023-81. That's all ordinances first reading.
Ordinance the second reading.
An ordinance waiving the residency requirement of the Safety Service Director, Matthew Lundy, pursuant to Section 735.01 and 737.01 of the Ohio Revised Code.
Mr. Tolet.
Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be read in its second reading.
There's a motion by Mr. Tolet. What is the, Mr. Tolet, just to take it for a vote? Is that what?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
There's a motion on the floor by Mr. Tolet.
Is that under suspension or just taking a reading?
Excuse me. Through you, Mr. President, for point of clarification, just for the record, Mr. Toledo, you're requesting a vote this evening?
Yes,
on this
please.
matter? For passage and suspension of rules?
Yes.
Okay, so let the
The
record reflect that. If you would, if you would restate your motion.
Mr. Sarah, is there any further discussion?
Question. Okay.
Mr. Oswald, did you have a question?
Through you, Mr. President, I just want to make sure clear.
On a review of the record, there was no suspension of the rules due to the fact of members, et cetera, who are absent. There was not a proper suspension of the rules, hence the second reading this evening.
Would go forward, if that makes sense. Am I stating that okay?
Through you, Mr. President, to answer your question, Mr. Tolet, yes. If you vote aye for the suspension, that is to move forward to the vote. If you vote aye on the passage, then you are voting in favor of waiving the requirement.
And then I would like to amend that this be a roll call vote. Do I need to ask for an amendment?
That could be a separate motion, and To be honest, based
I
on
think we
how
just-
the voting would go, I would likely
Let's go with the
ask
first.
for that anyways, so, just for purposes of counting the votes.
Mr. President, I'll make the motion for the roll call vote.
Second.
Second by Mr. Tolet. I guess my,
Through you, Mr.
I
President.
guess I'm at a loss here because I think there was a motion to put it on for a vote. Now we're asking for a roll call vote. I mean, if we were to, someone could call for the roll call vote if they wanted, going down over and through, so. I don't
That
know
is
why
my
we have-
understanding, yes, a roll call vote may always be requested.
Before I take the vote, Mr. Lippian?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. President. So just so I understand what we're doing tonight, because the last vote was for passage but not suspension, essentially what we're doing is a redo where we're going to vote for suspension and then whether or not we are going to grant the waiver. So this tonight would be a final vote, at least for the purposes of this ordinance, on whether to grant the waiver. Do I understand that correctly?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the first vote will be on the suspension. If there are at least 8 votes for the suspension, then the next vote, we will move forward on whether or not to pass. If there are less than 8 votes to suspend, then this matter will move on to a third reading, because we don't have enough to suspend and to move forward on a second reading.
Is there any further discussion?
Question.
Question's been called.
On the suspension,
Roll call vote on the suspension.
Mr. Callahan,
Aye.
Mr. Sierra,
Aye.
Mr. Oswald,
Aye.
Mr. Corbin,
Aye.
Mrs. Mitchell,
Aye.
Mr. Tolet,
Aye.
Mr. Lippian,
Nay?
Mr. Schneider,
Aye.
Mr. Stewart.
Aye.
8.
There are 8 ayes and 1 nay. Therefore, we'll move on to the vote on the passage. Also by roll call.
On the passage, Mr. Callahan,
Aye.
Mr. Sierra,
Aye.
Mr. Oswald,
Aye.
Mr. Corbin,
Aye.
Mrs. Mitchell,
Nay.
Mr. Tolet,
Nay.
Mr. Lippian, Mr. Lippian,
Mr. Lippian is thinking. I would like to have a third reading on this. I voted no on the suspension, so I'm going to abstain.
so that was a nay?
That's an abstention.
Mr. Schneider,
Nay.
Mr. Stewart,
Nay.
four, with an abstention. Four, with an abstention. So it does not
Go to
pass.
a third reading? Does it go to a third reading?
Well, to be honest, Mr. President, I will review. However, at first blush, I mean, if that is not a passage, although there is an abstention. It is based upon a full council vote and 4 in favor, based upon a total of 11. However, I will look into that, but at first blush, no, this would not move on to a third reading. But
It will not go to a third reading?
that's my first inclination, but I will take it under advisement. So, and I will let you know as soon as I know.
That's all ordinances, second reading?
Just a question in regards to that, I know that's that, but over and through, if Mr. Lippian is going to abstain from a vote, he should never have commented on the suspension.
And I will also take that under advisement and research on that. I would say an abstention, my first blush, an abstention would be for everything. Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. President, through you to the law director. So it does not go for a third vote? Did I hear you correctly?
As I said before, I will need to take this under advisement, but at first blush, I would say it would not go for a third reading.
Thank you.
That was all ordinances second reading.
Ordinance is third reading.
There are none.
Committee calls.
Community Development requests the Law Director, Safety Service Director, Building Inspector, and Engineer on Monday, 5/22, beginning at 6 p.m. Items referred. Joint CD Finance requests the Mayor, Law Director, Finance Director, Safety Service Director, and Engineer on Monday, 5/22, immediately following the Community Development meeting. Finance requests the Mayor, Law Director, Finance Director, Safety Service Director, and Engineer on Monday, 5/22, immediately following the joint meeting. Items referred. Rules request the Law Director, Safety Service Director on Wednesday, 5/24, beginning at 6 p.m. Utility Safety Environment requests the Law Director, Safety Service Director, and Engineer on Wednesday, 6/7, beginning at 6 p.m. And Strategic Planning requests the Mayor, Safety Service Director, Finance Director, and Law Director on Monday, 6/5, immediately following council.
Miscellaneous and unfinished business.
Seeing none, Mr. President, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Seconded by, motion by Ms. Mitchell, second by Mr. Sayre. Is there any further discussion?
Question?
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. We're going to be, so this council meeting is adjourned as what it is, but we'll be going into strategic planning in 5 minutes. So those who have to take a recess, now it's time to go.
Wait 1 second.
Hey, Mary. Mary.